We asked why something went viral, why a video reached 40 million people overnight, why a stranger's opinion suddenly became the opinion of an entire country by lunchtime. We rarely ask the other question, the one underneath it, who decided it should, not decided in the way a person decides. Not a single editor circling a headline in red ink, not a network executive choosing what airs at 9. Something else made that choice. Something without a face, without an office, without a name you could look up. And whatever it is, it made that decision in less time than it took you to read the sentence. And it made a version of that same decision roughly 1 trillion times today for 1 trillion different people, each one convinced they were simply seeing what was popular. That's the story most people never think to ask about. Not what went viral, but what exactly decides that anything does. Because somewhere between a video being uploaded and a video being seen, a judgment was made. A ranking, a bet on your attention. And the thing making that bet has quietly become one of the most powerful forces in human affairs, deciding not just what we watch, but who gets heard, who gets believed, and who gets erased in silence. This is not a story about going viral. This is a story about who or what gets to decide. There was a time when influence had an address. If you wanted your idea to reach the public, it had to pass through someone. A newspaper editor deciding what belonged on the front page. A television executive deciding what America watched at dinner. A record label deciding which voice was worth pressing onto vinyl. These gatekeepers held enormous power, but it was a power you could see, name, and if necessary, fight. You could write a letter to the editor. You could boycott a network. You could stand outside a studio with a sign. The gate was real, and so was the person standing at it. Power, in that era, was concentrated, but it was also accountable because it belonged to someone who could be identified, criticized, replaced. Then the gate disappeared. Or rather, it didn't disappear, it dissolved into code. The internet promised to remove gatekeepers entirely. No more executives deciding what culture got to exist. Anyone, anywhere, could publish anything. And for a moment, that felt like freedom, like power had finally been returned to the people. But a system with no gatekeepers still needs a way to decide what rises and what sinks. Someone still has to choose what 1 billion people see first. That choice didn't vanish. It simply changed hands, from editors in glass offices to something far harder to locate, question, or hold to account. The gate didn't open. It just stopped having a face. So, if it isn't a person deciding anymore, what is it? At its core, an algorithm is simple to describe and almost impossible to fully see. It is a set of instructions built to achieve one goal: keep you here. Not inform you, not enlighten you, not even entertain you. Exactly, though entertainment is often the bait. Its actual objective is retention. The longer you stay, the more it succeeds. This sounds obvious once it's said out loud, but it's worth sitting with because it quietly rewrites everything we assume about how ideas spread. We tend to believe that what's popular must be, in some rough sense, good, accurate, valuable, or at least widely agreed upon. That belief made sense in the era of visible gatekeepers, who were at least nominally chasing credibility alongside ratings. An algorithm has no such split loyalty. It doesn't reward truth. It doesn't reward nuance. It doesn't even reward quality, in any sense a human would recognize the word. It rewards whatever produces a measurable reaction. A pause, a click, a comment, a share, a return visit 20 minutes later. Anything that generates that signal gets pushed further. Anything that doesn't, regardless of its merit, quietly disappears into silence. This is the part most people never fully absorb. The system isn't trying to show you the best version of reality. It's trying to show you the version you're least able to look away from. But an algorithm doesn't optimize for attention out of curiosity. It optimizes for attention because attention is the product being sold. Every platform built on this model runs on the same underlying transaction. You don't pay to use it, which was always the giveaway, if anyone had stopped to notice. Advertisers pay, and what they're buying isn't space on a page. It's access to your focus, measured in seconds, sold in bulk, priced by how precisely it can be targeted. This is the part of the architecture that rarely gets said plainly. The algorithm isn't serving you. You are what's being served. Your habits, your hesitations, your late-night scrolling, your arguments in the comments. All of it becomes a dataset that makes the next prediction sharper, the next ad more valuable, the next hour of your attention easier to hold. And this is why outrage performs so well. Not because the system was built to divide people, but because division is simply efficient. A furious comment section keeps people typing. A controversial claim keeps people returning to see how the argument ends. Calm, careful, accurate content rarely produces that same electricity. So, without any human ever choosing to favor conflict, the system learns to favor it anyway because conflict pays the bills. Nobody designed this to make the world angrier. They designed it to make the world profitable. The anger was simply the most efficient byproduct. To understand why this works so well, you have to stop looking at the technology and start looking at the species using it. Algorithms didn't invent the human weaknesses they profit from. They found them already built in, already ancient, already waiting. The need to belong to a group. The instinct to notice threats before anything else. The satisfaction of being proven right in front of an audience. The discomfort of uncertainty and the relief of a simple answer. None of this was created by a platform. All of it was inherited from tens of thousands of years of survival, long before anyone had a screen to survive on. What the algorithm did was find the fastest way to trigger each one, over and over, at a scale no tribe, church, or nation ever could. It learned, through billions of quiet experiments, that a post confirming what you already believe holds your attention longer than one that challenges it. That a stranger's outrage feels more urgent than a stranger's nuance. That novelty, something slightly shocking, slightly new, pulls harder than anything familiar, even when the familiar is true and the novel is not. This is why the experience so often feels personal, even intimate. It isn't reading your mind, it's reading your species. And because those instincts sit far beneath conscious thought, the pull rarely feels like manipulation. It feels like curiosity, like relevance, like simply noticing what matters. The most effective systems of influence in history were never the ones that fought human nature. They were the ones that learned to move with it. There's a phrase people still use without questioning it, going viral organically, as if some ideas simply catch fire on their own, spreading through pure merit, untouched by any hand. It's a comforting story. It suggests the system is fair, that if your idea is good enough, true enough, funny enough, it will rise no matter who you are or what resources you have. It's also almost entirely a myth. What actually happens is closer to an audition than a fair trial. Every post is quietly tested on a small slice of an audience first, a few hundred people, sometimes fewer. If that first small group reacts quickly enough, the system offers it to a larger group. If that group reacts too, it goes further still. What looks like the world spontaneously agreeing something matters is, underneath, a cascading series of tiny approvals, each one granted by a machine measuring speed of reaction, not depth of thought. This is why timing, formatting, even the first 3 seconds of a video can matter more than the substance inside it. Not because substance is irrelevant, but because substance never gets the chance to matter if it fails the first fastest test. The gate didn't disappear when the visible gatekeepers left. It became 1,000 invisible microgates, each one testing not whether an idea deserves an audience, but whether it can survive the algorithm's opening seconds. Organic reach was never really organic. It was simply engineered so well that it stopped looking designed at all. Every system of power eventually produces its own experts, people who study its rules closely enough to bend them. Medieval courts had their diplomats. Financial markets had their traders. The algorithmic age has produced its own version, quieter but no less strategic. The people who learn to read the machine. They are rarely the most qualified voices in their field. Often, they aren't trying to inform anyone at all. What they share is a different kind of literacy, an instinct for which opening line survives the first 3 seconds, which topics the system currently favors, which emotional register earns the fastest reaction. They didn't necessarily set out to understand the architecture of influence. They simply noticed what worked, repeated it, and watched their reach compound while others, often more thoughtful, more accurate, more deserving, remained invisible. This is the quiet redistribution of power that most people miss entirely. It didn't move from the old gatekeepers to the public the way the internet once promised. It moved from anyone with institutional credibility to anyone with pattern recognition. A teenager who understands what the system rewards can now outperform an expert who has spent decades earning the right to be heard. This isn't a story of villains manipulating an innocent public. Most of these new strategists aren't cynical. Many genuinely believe in what they're posting. But belief was never the variable the system was measuring. Fluency in its patterns was, and once influence stopped requiring credibility, it started requiring something else entirely. Fluency in the machine became the new form of authority. For a long time, this seemed to matter only in small ways. Which song became a hit? Which comedian got famous? Which restaurant had a line around the block after one video? Harmless outcomes, mostly the ordinary churn of culture, just faster than before. But the same architecture that decides which song gets heard also decides which political claim spreads fastest in the final week before an election. The same system that made a dance trend global can make a piece of financial speculation feel like consensus, moving markets before anyone has verified whether it's true. The same invisible test that decides whether a joke survives its first 3 seconds also decides whether a public health warning reaches the people who need it, or gets buried beneath something louder, faster, and considerably less accurate. This is the moment the story stops being about entertainment and starts being about governance in the broadest sense of the word. Not governance by law or institution, but governance by attention, an invisible force quietly shaping what millions of people believe is common knowledge, urgent or true, simply because it was the version that survived the fastest test. No single company designed this outcome. No architect sat down and decided that financial panic or political division should travel faster than careful analysis. It emerged gradually from a system built to reward speed of reaction over depth of thought, applied, without exception, to every subject that passed through it. Trends were never the real story. They were simply the most visible symptom of something deciding, quietly, what an entire society pays attention to next. There was a time when the ability to read was rare enough to be a form of power in itself. Those who could read contracts, scripture, and law held an advantage over those who couldn't. Not because the words were secret, but because most people had never been taught how to see the structure behind them. Eventually, literacy spread widely enough that it stopped being a privilege and became an expectation. A baseline for participating in society at all. Something similar is happening now, quietly with a different kind of text. The feed in front of you, the recommendations, the trends, the sudden certainty that everyone agrees on something. All of it is a kind of language too. Written not in words, but in engagement, timing, and repetition. And most people still don't know how to read it. They experience its effects, the anger, the urgency, the sense that this matters right now, without ever seeing the sentence structure underneath. Understanding how algorithms decide who gets influence doesn't mean withdrawing from the systems that use them. That ship sailed long ago, and there's no realistic version of modern life outside of it. What it means is something closer to what literacy always meant. The ability to notice you're being spoken to in a language built to move you, and to ask what it's actually saying before deciding whether to believe it. The people who learn to read this new language won't be immune to it. No one fully is, but they will at least know they're being addressed. Every era believes its gatekeepers are the last ones. The printing press ended the monopoly of the church. Broadcast ended the monopoly of the press. The internet was supposed to end the monopoly of broadcast entirely, and for a moment, It looked like power over attention had finally dissolved into millions of individual hands. It didn't dissolve. It relocated into a place stranger than any throne room or newsroom that came before it. Not a person, not even an institution in the traditional sense. A process, a set of instructions running quietly beneath billions of decisions, optimizing for a single number, indifferent to everything a decision might mean. That's the detail worth sitting with longer than any other in this story. Every previous system of influence, however corrupt or self-interested, was still run by someone who could be persuaded, embarrassed, or replaced. Kings feared rebellion. Editors feared cancellation. Even the worst gatekeepers in history operated inside a web of human consequence. An optimization function fears nothing. It has no reputation to protect, no conscience to appeal to, no long-term interest beyond the metric it was built to chase. It doesn't choose to divide people or distort truth. It simply follows whatever produces the strongest signal, forever, without fatigue or doubt. That may be the first time in history that humanity's attention has been governed by something with no stake in humanity's outcome at all, which points to a principle that outlives this particular topic entirely. The danger of any system was never its intelligence. It was its indifference. A ruler who wants something from you can be reasoned with. A process that wants nothing from you, only a reaction, cannot. That is the quiet inheritance of this moment. Not a villain to defeat, not a company to boycott, but a new kind of power to recognize. One measured in seconds of attention rather than crowns or capital. Ruling not through command, but through the simple, relentless act of noticing what moves us and giving us more of exactly that.